There we go. Okay, so power is the concept of the day. Okay, and power is equal to work divided by time. Okay, it is the rate at which you do work. Power is the rate at which you do work. So if you have a more powerful car engine, then you can, for example, go uphill faster, or you can speed the car up faster. Yeah? Yeah. That's why we have more powerful engines. So, for example, back in the day, I had a 30 horsepower Volkswagen van. 30 horsepower was the perfect engine for that van. If it was perfectly tuned up, if the windows were rolled up, if it was on a level road without a headwind, 30 horsepower, press the pedal to the metal, that car would go almost 60 miles per hour. Uphill, much slower. The engine wasn't tuned up, not quite as fast. Okay, it had a window open for fresh air, it would go noticeably slower. It would go like 57. Okay? Now, if that van had a 60 horsepower engine, it would be a little more peppy. I could probably even speed. I could climb hills without slowing down to 20 miles per hour. Like, people hated me. I got pulled over for going too slow with that van. Yeah? I was... Yeah, I know. Isn't that sad? And the police officer called it a jalopy. How fast will the old jalopy go? Now, to be sure, I had done a bad job tuning it up. And in fact, what had happened, I didn't know this until afterwards, was that there's a little carbon thing that touches the rotor in the distributor. Yeah, there's a little thing that makes the spark go to all the cylinders, right? And that carbon thing had fallen off, and so the spring was acting as the contact. Apparently that doesn't work as well, right? And so it was not running very well, and I could only go about 45 miles an hour, but I had to get to a wedding. In fact, I was best man in a wedding. Yeah, I had to get there, and I even told the officer that, and then he called it a jalopy, and I don't know, there we have it. Now, let's go fast forward, right? Honda Accords come with a 190 horsepower engine. Isn't that amazing? Little bitty Honda Accord, great big Volkswagen van. The Accord has 190 horsepower, the van had 30. Give the van a 60 horse engine and it would have been fine, right? Why does an Accord need 190 horsepower? It's a small, streamlined car. It's because people want to go fast, right? They don't want to slow down for hills, right? Yeah. They don't want to slow down for hills. They want to be able to go zoom. I think we could get probably really good gas mileage if we just like made our cars like the same power they had in the 80s. But anyway, that's another story that we could do. I used to use this example. I would say, when we're talking about Newton's forces, I'd say, you know how your car slows down when you go up hills? Well, cars used to slow down when they went up hills. Do your car slow down on hills? No, it's just like it kicks in overdrive, like brrr, right? And you keep going up the hill. Some hills, yes, right? And my parents used to make this joke, and I thought this was a funny joke. They would say, push on the back seat, back of the front seat. Like we're all sitting in the back, and we'd push on the front seat to make the car go faster.
Does it work?
Does it work?
No. Yeah.
No, that's an inside force, right? And so what Newton's first law says, in the absence of an outside force, right, objects continue at a straight line at a constant speed. Well, an inside force doesn't do anything. An outside force would. So if you get out of the car and push, that would do it. How'd we get to there? Work over time. Power. So, Honda Accord, 190 horsepower. If you're going to climb from Welch's to, say, Timberline Lodge or something like that, right, the Honda Accord's going to do it faster than the van. And that's because it can do work at a faster rate. Does that work? So to speak? Yeah? There we have it. And then the other formula, this is the formula that the world uses. IB gives you only this, force times velocity. I'll show you both of those. Okay? But first let's look at power as work over time. Let's suppose that we do 18 joules of work in 3 seconds. Then that is going to be 6 joules per second, right? That's going to be the rate at which we do work. So this is really a very basic concept. We can even make a triangle, right? We can say work is power times time, right? So power is the rate at which we do work. Work is how much, the rate at which we do it times the time we do it, yeah? It's like how much you get paid is your hourly rate times the hours you work, yeah? Yeah? And then the time it takes to do a certain amount of work is the amount you have to do divided by the rate you do it. This is pretty basic stuff, yeah? Okay. And then a couple other things. Watt is another unit for joules per second. The unit for joules per second. Watt is another unit for joules per second. That's what I'm trying to find out. I don't know, there's something there, right? Yeah. So it could be, you could write 6 watts, as in Riley Watts, or Brady Watts. Yeah.
6 watts looks like B watts.
Yeah, it could be. Or if you know Mr. Watt, then you can call it a capital W, right? Like that. There it is. So it's someone's name, and there it is. So the readings on a light bulb, a 100-watt light bulb transforms 100 joules of energy per second into largely heat if it's an incandescent bulb, or into light if it's a fluorescent or something like that. Okay. And then we can also turn horsepower, right? 1 horsepower. You can convert that to watts. It's 745.7 watts. I've got another good one. Who is the president of China? That's what I'm trying to find out. The president of China.
Who?
I tell me, the president of China is who?
Yes, who?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there we go. Something like that. Do you know the capital of Alaska?
Do you know?
No, do you? A guy walks into a bar with a giraffe. The giraffe lies down on the floor, falls asleep. And the bartender says, "Hey, what's that lion there?" The guy says, "That's not a lion, that's a giraffe." Steve! Let's do that in the halls, right? Alan! Okay, now let's derive another equation, right? Somehow work divided by time has to be force times velocity. But it's a mystery how. Well, let me, remove all mystery. Power is work divided by time. Work is force times distance. And distance divided by time is velocity, right? So that's where that comes from. Right? And now we can solve interesting problems. Oh, we can make another triangle with this too, right? We can make a triangle that looks like this. Let's see, power, force, velocity. Yeah? And we can have fun with this, right? If you want to know how fast your car goes, like its top speed pedal to the metal, that's going to be its power divided by the force of air friction or something, largely it's air friction. Okay? Or it could be the force, like partly the parallel force climbing a hill or something like that, the whole force. Okay? And it gets more complicated because, of course, the force is going to get bigger and bigger as you go faster and faster. The force is going to be the power output divided by the velocity, et cetera, et cetera. So we can do, let's do the problem, the 30 horsepower van, right? I could go about 25 meters per second. If you turned the miles per hour into meters per second, that's about how many meters per second it would do. So the question is, how much force is opposing that van? At about 25 meters per second, what's the force of largely air friction, but rolling friction, all the friction, right, acting against the van? So I'm just going to use power. I'm going to do power is force times velocity. What do I have to do with horsepower? Times it by 745.7, right? So 30 horsepower times 745.7. And that is watts per horsepower is what it is, right? And that equals the unknown force times the 25 meters per second. So we can calculate the frictive force. Frictive. Let's see, divided by 25. I'm getting that the force is 894.84 newtons, and we don't have that many sig figs. And then do we know how to turn newtons into pounds?